What's up, everybody? Welcome to Getting Curious with Mitch. This is my new co-host, Chandler. He's my cousin. And as you know, or come to find out now, we are doing a revival of the OG podcast that was majorly successful on this channel. If you haven't seen the videos from a couple years ago, they're still up. They were filmed during COVID times, so they have all the masks and things still. But Chandler, we have been buddies. We're obviously cousins, but we've been good friends for years. And we just wanted to we game together. We talk on the phone for hours, and we're just like, man, now is it we should just start a podcast. We I think we share a lot of the same goals and have a lot of really interesting conversations. So, Chan, welcome to the pod, my friend.
Thank you. It's honestly great to be here, as the co-host for Getting Curious with Mitch. I remember when you first started, that is something that I was like super motivated by because as you know, maybe not the viewers, I used to do like YouTube a lot. I didn't get like too many viewers. The most subscribers I ever gotten was like 220 or like nothing crazy, but I actually really loved the content creation side of things, not even like the viewership or anything. It's something that I really loved, and I think I just kind of got to the point where I burned myself out too much, just because I kind of overdid it. But I'm at this point where I'm like really in the mindset of, this is kind of like a second chance, a second restart, and you already have that same motivation on the other side of things. You have a lot of experience with already podcast creation and also social media marketing. I think we can use that for a lot of benefits for this podcast itself. I also think we actually talked about this a little bit off the camera, but and like Mitch said, we both enjoy talking to each other on the phone, and it honestly is hard for us to get off the phone because we always end up giving follow-on questions and things like that. So it's honestly inevitable that we created a podcast together to talk about our things and opinions that we just constantly talk about for 45 minutes on end when we're over the phone and just talking about our daily lives.
Absolutely. And Chan, I think one of the reasons I personally just love hanging out and talking with you, dude, like I think we do have conversations where we're just BSing and having a good time. But for the most part, dude, like you're one of my closest friends, and I think you're a person who is highly motivated. It seems like every week or so when we hop on a phone call, you're always telling me about things that you're learning or doing. And like, it honestly motivates me to like, man, I got to step up my game and self-improve. And for those listening, Chandler is an absolute stud. Not only have we just been friends a long time, but he just finished a military contract in the Army. And
Yeah.
Ken, I'd love for you to talk about just a little bit, unless there's anything else you want to talk about first. But I think it'd be awesome for people to know a little bit about you and really because I know you as this super motivated guy that works way hard and is very goal driven. I'd love for you to just talk about your experience of some of the things that you did, especially in joining the military, because beforehand you were highly interested in real estate and getting into things there, and then it was one day we hopped on gaming, playing Warzone, and you're like, dude, I'm going to boot camp in a couple weeks, and I was like, what? Like, what's going on? So I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit. What motivated you to join the Army, and eventually talk about why you're not there anymore.
Yeah, there's actually it's an interesting kind of story of like how it evolved into like when I actually signed my contract and went into boot camp, like you said. But when I was in high school, I actually did junior ROTC for the Air Force, and I actually enjoyed it. I did it for 2 years, but I got to the point where I was like high enough rank, I guess, to where the next rank to get was basically just on a voting thing. And I just didn't like that. So I didn't want to do it another year, but I still enjoyed the concept. of, being in the military and, good order and discipline and all that. But it never really came to fruition for quite a few years. I knew for a fact that after I, got out of high school, or not even getting out of high school, but just as soon as possible, as soon as I was able to work, I wanted to work. I remember a couple summers I was working with my dad, not with my dad, but in the same company. I was working in the field and, working on renovating houses, and it was like for like $9 an hour, something like so low, but it was something that was like hard work, and it was a summer well spent. I got some spending money, and it just kind of made me motivated to push a little bit further. This was actually around the time where I was playing a lot of Counter-Strike, which as you know, I've like 3,500 hours, something absurd in that game. But
Yeah.
That was kind of the transition that summer. I think it was like my sophomore going into junior year when I did that. And that summer is kind of like where I kind of grew my work ethic, honestly. And basically every time after that. So my junior year, I finished at a normal high school, but my senior year, it was this charter school, which if you don't know, it is basically a school that's all online except 1 week or 1 day of the week, basically. And you just go in person and catch up with your teachers if you have any questions, kind of thing. Right. So I did that while I was full time. And, that
You had a busy senior year.
I had a busy senior year. It was kind of interesting. It was a different perspective, different vibe. There's a part of me that feels like it would have been cool to stick with the same class that I was hanging out with for 3 years. But there's also another part of me of just like, nah, I was like doing my own thing. I was grinding, I was starting my life. And
right.
At that point, I was actually starting to get an apartment with my stepsister at the time, now sister. She's fully adopted, but that's a whole like other topic that we can delve into in the future. But sure. But at the time, she was my stepsister, and we just kind of both wanted to move out and go get our own place. So we got our own apartment. It was a 2-bedroom. It was a decent sized apartment, but at that time, we ended up doing a lot of partying, and that was crazy. And like, there was this one time where I just remember, we just invited a few friends over, and then one after another, I don't know what happened, but there was like 30 people in our apartment. So it's just crazy. But yeah.
For context, you're living in Vegas right now.
I am living
in
Vegas.
That time. At that time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was that was definitely a fun and interesting time that I'm never going to forget. But nonetheless, that's kind of like the little history of kind of what propelled me towards it. Going into the military. But right after kind of that party phase, which I was still kind of in, I was able to secure a job in a construction company, and I was there for about 8 months. And that's kind of there's some stories. If you want, I can touch on one of them that I actually remember quite a bit, because it was definitely a life lesson.
Yeah, dude, let's hear it. But just to kind of recap, so you developed this work ethic pretty young, at age 16, 17. You're like, hey, there's some reward here for working really hard. And it sounds like upon graduating high school, you were ready to hit the ground running, but had a time where you were like just having fun.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that was a part of me of like kind of trying to get back at myself for not like having enough fun in high school, I guess. I don't know, but that's just the way I think of it. But yeah, it was I guess kind of going into that story that I was going to talk about. So I was at this construction company, but we had this like Christmas party or Christmas getaway or whatever you want to call it. But basically, the company paid for a few cabins that people and coworkers would stay in, and this was like my first time. I was only in the company for a few months at the time, like 5 months maybe, but I was getting used to the company, but there was this one time, so we were there for like a few days. So there was this one time where we did this like kind of razor group riding outing, which if no one knows what a razor is, it's basically like a quad for multiple people. But
ATV side by side, right?
ATV, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we did that, and we were switching off between whoever's driving back and forth, and we went around this big loop for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I honestly don't remember, but when we were finished, I was like the only one that wanted to go back on and do another loop. No one wanted to go, so I said, "Screw it! I'm ripping the trails again by myself this time." So, I went back on the same trail that we did, started ripping it. Going on the straightaways a little bit faster than usual, just on the straightaways because I already did it. So I kind of knew where I was going, but so before I go on to the next step, this was the time where I had a Nissan 370Z, which if people do not know, it's basically a drift car. It has a lot of torque for a tiny little car, but
yeah,
that's what I was driving, and I was driving an off-road ATV, and so on these corners, I would basically treat it like a drift car. And I would slow down a little bit, and then I would just start ripping it as I started to turn, and just kind of gun it while I'm drifting out. And I continued to do that 5 or 6 times. Then there's this like 6th or 7th time where I did just that, and sure enough, the back right tire hit a pothole. It bounced the entire ATV, put me on, and for perspective, it's a 4-person ATV, and I'm on the left side, obviously driving, and so it bounced up, popped on the right side, and I'm sliding for like 20 feet into a little tree, and I'm just there hanging like, what just happened?
Oh my god.
Yeah, so
it took a sec to process what just happened, huh?
yeah, it took a little bit because I got out, and there's a part of me that was just like, you know what, this is just going to be easier if I just run into the forest now and never look back. But sure enough, I called some coworkers. They said that they were on their way, and before they were able to come, a group of other coworkers who were riding the trails just as a family saw me, and we ended up pushing it back on its side, and I was able to drive it back. It was all busted, it was totaled, like it couldn't even go into 4-wheel drive, but it was able to drive far enough back to the cabin to where it didn't really have to worry about it. But that's kind of the background of that story. But basically what happened for the remainder of that trip was I basically got it honestly, like, it feels like I just got shunned for just crashing. Like, it was like literally in any conversation I talked to, and there's probably like 30-40 people there, any conversation I talked to, it got brought up. It was like the most like thing that I just wanted to just go in a room and just like stay away from everyone, because any time I talked to someone about anything, it would get brought up and I would just get like ridiculed. So it was kind of hardcore, but nonetheless a life lesson to where it was like, even though it's an outing to go have fun and all that, it doesn't mean to go crazy. It doesn't mean to necessarily, it just means to be safe and have fun, have a good time with your coworkers, have a good time with your family if you have your family out there. Um,
Yeah.
I look at it now, if I were to do that again, um, I look at it now that it'd be something that I would treat as kind of like like a business meeting. People are kind of judging you the entire time. Also, given the fact that there were like a bunch of higher ups there, it didn't help too much and it didn't look too good. But nonetheless, um, this was a few months before COVID. Um, a few months later, COVID started to really hit, and I got laid off. And I honestly, I really don't think it was laid off. I just think they were just trying to find an excuse to get rid of me. But I digress. But anyway,
Which I'd imagine was a pretty big blow, because I remember you were I remember talking with you on the phone during that time, and you were so stoked about that job too.
yeah.
You were always talking about like, man, like we're getting new investments, and the company's going to be expanding, and like I'm going to be able to move up. Like I remember you had like a lot of hope and pretty pumped about the future you had there at the time
Uh-huh.
before all that happened.
Yeah, it was. So when I first got there, I think actually, the one you're thinking of was a real estate company prior to that, which I actually
Oh, okay,
technically
yeah.
am working at, but they're under a different company. It's a little complicated, but they have a couple like LLCs, basically same people, same company, just
Gotcha.
different name. But nonetheless, that's how I felt about that company. This company, was something to get experience and go the full 9 yards, if it worked out that way. But
Right.
when I remember actually, like a month after, my dad was just like, do you like miss being at that job at all, or like how do you feel? And I'm just like, I do not miss being there one bit. And the reason why I can say that confidently is because they were such assholes to me. Not necessarily the higher ups or anything. They're actually pretty nice, but the people around me were assholes to me. Complete, just like coworkers that you never want to work with. Like I literally got told I was a fuck face from one coworker one time. It was like,
Sheesh.
are you kidding me? Like, this is just not somewhere I want to work. But I just stayed there just because it was just something. It was the best I could get for like my experience. So it was, yeah.
Sounds
I
like
do
toxic work environment.
definitely toxic. But it's nonetheless, it's a lot of learning experiences. And after that, it was actually a blessing in disguise, because I know you remember this. This was the times where we played hours upon hours of Warzone.
The perfect storm of Warzone came out, COVID hit, everyone's on unemployment, no one's in
Yeah.
school anymore, and so yeah, we had a lot of time on Warzone.
Yeah.
That could be a whole nother podcast just to talk about that
That was so fun, but
golden age of gaming.
oh
But
yeah.
but
But
no, to bring it back, it sounds like so pretty traumatic end. It seems like to that job. And
yeah.
then where did that leave you when that happened?
Yeah, so I actually went on unemployment, and I just got to like I was just like, I just got to figure my situation out. Like, I am not going backwards, I'm going forwards. Like, I am going to see this as a positive, not a negative. The time for progress is now, kind of thing. So I took it with a grain of salt and just like, I got to figure something out right now. Started looking and looking, and it just so happened that being on unemployment at that time was the best situation for anyone, because I made like $1,000 a week off of unemployment, that I did not have to pay back. But that was crazy. But I don't remember exactly when I had the thought of, it was like, I don't know, I feel like it was like a month in or something like that, where, I'm just like, this unemployment is not going to last forever. It's only going to last for the next few months, at least of what I know of. I still need to figure something out. So I don't really know what enticed me, but I remember going onto an army website, I believe, and not really signing up with anything, but I remember putting in my phone number. And the reason why I remember that is because I a few days later, I kind of like totally forgot that I did it. A few days later, I I get a text, just a random text, and it's like, Chandler. I'm like, what the hell? How do they know my name? This is some random number, and and sure enough, it was an army recruiter. So that's kind of how they snagged me. But I went on with the process, did everything on the ASVAB. I kind of killed it. Got a 96, and it was reconfirmed. I did the test twice, got a 96 both times.
And ASVAB, is that like a placement exam when you join the army? What's that exactly?
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but it is a placement exam for the military as a whole, honestly.
Okay, got it.
It basically decides and depicts what job you're basically fit for.
Gotcha.
So it ranges from like, I don't know, like a really low number. I'd be surprised if anyone got a 1, because from my understanding, if you basically get a point or like 5 points if you put your name on the test. So 1 from like 99 or 100, and
so if you put a 1 on there, you're straight front lines infantry. You're just like, this guy's an idiot. And
oh yeah, I remember there's this guy from my basic failed 4 times because he got like a 16. It was like, and he got wavered in because he was trying so hard. Like, I mean, props to him.
Like, we'll put this guy we need a janitor on a base in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, he was infantry. He was not infantry, but he this is what gets me. He wanted to change his job to infantry.
Okay.
So it's like, I couldn't get it, but I plan on switching over. But,
hey, bringing it back though. So you kill it on the placement exam, and you're feeling pretty good. But before you keep going with like getting in and everything, so you're not really sure what triggered you to do it, other than your situation of, hey, like, I'm on unemployment, like I got to figure out like a good game plan for my next couple years.
yeah.
And for whatever reason, you're just like, army, like, I don't know what was going through your head. It's like, this is secure. There's like a career path. Yeah. Are those some of the thoughts? Like, what was intriguing to you about the army?
So even right now, and we can talk about this a little bit later, like why I wanted to do one contract, but it was, I guess we can dive into it a little bit. So I knew from the get-go when I signed up for the army, is I knew why I wanted to do it. So that's like a big plus in my books. So before I dive into that, I just want to explain like why I knew why I wanted to do it. So
yeah,
I've always wanted to be like an entrepreneur, and we've talked about like analysis paralysis and all that stuff, but I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And it is a little startling and a little I can't think of the word, but a little startling to get started. You don't really know what's happening. As we talked about briefly, I've been interested in real estate for honestly a pretty long time, and that's basically where my head was at. I still do. I still want to start my own real estate investment company, focused on rental properties. So basically why the army in that sense. So I wanted to join the army because I looked at it as a perspective of getting me experience. Also, it's one of the best places to gain leadership skills. And um, in my opinion, I think having good leadership skills, it's something that can go a long way if you have your own company. If you do not have good leadership skills with your own company, your new company that is just barely getting off the ground, it is going to have a rough time. It is going to be a lot more hard than getting people to follow you and to understand why they're doing what they do at the beginning. So that's
Yeah,
basically why I wanted to join the army, is to get more experience as a whole and experience as a leader.
that makes sense. Okay. So you have this game plan, and I'm guessing the interest of starting a real estate investment company or having that dream one day came from your job work experience or something, right? Or the
Yeah,
experience you had at that point. You're like, okay, this is going to be where I make my money eventually, and I just need a stepping stone to get there.
yeah, exactly. And as you know now, my job in the army was a paralegal. That wasn't my first initial thought. I actually wanted to be an accountant, and I knew for a fact that was a job because that was something I searched up when I was looking
Yeah.
for an army job when I looked the first time. But of course, it wasn't something that was available at that time. Um, I kind of took it as is, and it kind of seemed like those accounting jobs didn't really pop up a lot in the army. Now, whether or not my recruiter was being honest with me, I think he was. He was a really chill recruiter, just being super blunt about what I'm going to do with certain jobs. But basically, at the time, it was either um, HR specialist or a paralegal specialist. So I kind of thought it out, and I'm just like, paralegal sounds a little bit more interesting than HR.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was one of the best choices and best thoughts that I've ever had, because it has been an experience. It has been a ride. If anyone out there is trying to join the military or the army, at least, the JAG Corps, Judge Advocate General Corps, is basically what I work under as a paralegal in the army, and it has been a total treat. I know a lot of my coworkers will find that surprising because I'm only doing one contract, but like I said, I knew what I was doing from the get go. I knew why I wanted to go in, what I wanted to get out of it, and it just so happened that everything kind of worked towards that goal just subconsciously, because I ended up getting stationed at Fort Irwin, and um, that installation is like one of the more difficult places to be at because it's more secluded, but it's also was very beneficial for me because it was only 3 hours away from Las Vegas. So I was able to see family members a lot more often than
So it
compared
worked
to,
out.
yeah, it worked out completely.
So,
It was a little bit of a double-edged sword, because I knew it would be tough, but it would allow me to stay sane and still keep my connections with friends and whatnot
yeah.
back home.
Hey, so Chan, I gotta ask, bro, because you said your choice was between two different sectors of the army. There's you had the HR opportunity and paralegal, and I totally I don't know exactly what you just said, but you said something to the effect of like, well, paralegal sounds way more interesting, and you're like, man, like that blew it out of the water. That was the coolest thing ever. Just to play devil's advocate, and I agree because I know I mean we've been on the phone and I've heard about your all of your experience and the cool things you
Sure.
have, and I'm excited to talk about it. But bro, just to play devil's advocate and say what probably some people are thinking, like being a paralegal and HR, both of those probably sound kind of boring. right off the bat. Like they don't sound like super fun. Like, oh man, this is gonna be the coolest experience ever. So why was that so freaking cool, dude?
So, gotta keep in mind, I wanted to join the army being an accountant. Like, no one does that. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, why being a paralegal was really cool is it goes back to me wanting to gain experience as a leader. Just overall as a person. And I believe I accomplished that. Obviously, there's always more things to growth. It's a constant, never ending cycle. But compared to me of who I was as a leader, 3 years ago compared to now, I feel a lot more confident in my abilities and capabilities. Being able to lead people in the right direction when I actually know how to do something. That is one of my strong suits. If I actually know how to do something, I can effectively lead and teach people the right way. But that
So I gotta
is,
ask
yeah.
then, what were the leadership opportunities that you had working as a paralegal?
So that was actually what I was about to get to. So it was being a paralegal in the army, you are going to be talking with a lot of commanders, a lot of high ranking officials in the army, because you are talking about legal actions with them, something that is very close to their work, that they are very, they just take it very seriously. And if you know how to get the work done, they like you so much, and they will take you by your side or by their side the entire way through when they're in a command position. And I've seen that many times over when a commander or a first sergeant is trying to ask for a favor kind of thing, like, trying to expedite a packet or whatever. And it's just because we're in that position that we're able to do that. But nonetheless, it was the ability to be in that position to where we could actually talk with a lot of higher ups and get their knowledge out of their head and ask them questions, compared to um, talking to people that don't have that much experience. And it just gave us the ability, me and my coworkers, to just propel ourselves in knowledge like so much more further than other people in other MOSs, just at such a faster pace, because we were able to ask questions freely to high ranking officers that an infantryman just straight up couldn't do. Their questions would go to their NCO, and that's basically it, or their first sergeant. But we were able to talk to like a full bird colonel, which basically, to lightly touch on the ranking scale, that's this that is one step below a general. So
Wow.
it's definitely way up there. And we were actually able to talk to them like a normal person. And it's almost like talking to a CEO, because you don't get to talk to those people a lot. And when you do talk to them, you learn so much, not just by what they talk about, but how they speak, how they portray themselves. There's a lot of things to take into account to those kinds of people, because they got there for a reason. And um, there's just so many learning experiences that I really needed at that time. And at this
Yeah.
point, it was just it in my opinion, it just became so beneficial to me in my short time span in the military.
So if I'm hearing you right, because of the nature of your position as a paralegal, you had way more opportunities to talk with people who had made the army not only their career or had been in there for 15, 20 plus years, but had also just really excelled in what they were doing, right? Like these were people who had, I would imagine, if you're a step below a general, like these people have had to deal with some pretty insane leadership opportunities or done some incredible things within the military. And you being a paralegal, you got to pick their brain firsthand. You're not watching YouTube interviews of these guys. You're able to
Yeah.
really talk to these people.
Yeah, and actually, there was this one time where I was actually able to talk to a 1-star general, a brigadier general is what they're called.
Okay.
But I remember I knew a question I really wanted to ask was what their favorite book was, and it totally caught me off guard. But their first response was, well, Specialist Yule, let me ask you this. What is your favorite book? I'm like, I mean, I didn't answer, but
Yeah.
it was like, oh, okay. Like, he wants to learn about me first before he answers the question. But yeah, that was actually really interesting. That was actually one of the, I'm not sure a lot of people can say this, but I ended up fist bumping a general. So that was definitely an experience.
Not too many infantrymen can say they did that, huh?
Not even a lot of people. Normally it's a handshake, which I definitely would prefer most of the times, but a lot of the times my my hands tend to sweat. I'm sure a lot of people have this. It's called hyperhidrosis, but basically what happened is my hands were just dripping in this ceremony one time, and this general was walking around, handshaking the paralegals and just like, hi, how you doing? And I just went for it. I just went for the knuckle bash, and he's like, oh, okay, yeah, word, gotcha. And he didn't even think twice about it. It was the greatest thing ever.
Oh, it's sick, bro. Well, dude, that's sweet. So tons of leadership. I guess if I'm hearing you right, like the leadership experience you got, maybe not have been like you were leading like a ton of different teams or like really organizing a ton of people, but you got to learn from people who had some phenomenal leadership experience and kind of take note firsthand of what works and what doesn't work without having to go through the school of hard knocks with it.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I've had to do it a couple times to where it was like training peers, which if people have ever trained peers, they know it's the hardest thing to do in leadership.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. It is very difficult. It is something that will make you learn so fast because not a lot of people want to learn from their peers because they don't see you as experienced as much as them. Or anything of those like weird little stipulations, they won't even listen to you, even if you're assigned to being in charge. So I had a couple times where I had to be the leader of my peers because we had no sergeants or no NCOs available to being at the installation, so I was assigned to being in charge of them. And the first time it was I didn't know what I was doing. I was a few months into the Army, and
Right.
I just kind of had to learn on the fly. I was still learning, and they're just like, yep, here you go, good luck, basically. It was a trial by fire. But before I came back to Vegas, the last like half year, honestly, I was able to really get into the groove because there's new paralegals that I was able to. I had more experience at this time, and like I said, that's one of my strong points. When I have experience, I know how to. I've been in people's shoes in a way, so I can understand where they're coming from, like why this is a little bit more difficult in certain areas, and like what to look out for, kind of thing.
Right.
So the second time around it just seemed a lot more natural. It wasn't as if I was like trying hard or whatever. It honestly feels like I was just being a normal person, and I got a lot of like recognition for that, which was pretty cool because it didn't feel like I really got that in the past, which I did get for a couple times, but it was like for a while, it was just like, just kind of in the motions, just doing the same thing over and over. But it was finally to the point where I I started to lead my peers the right way, in the correct direction, to where it was really recognized by higher ups, and is really thanked from one of my NCOs that was going out and training, and he came back and, kind of realized that he didn't have to start from square one, kind of thing, because I already taught a lot of the basic tasks of being a paralegal in the military.
Oh man, that's super cool. So you kind of had baptism by fire, thrown right
Yeah.
into the deep end with having to figure things out and not only just learn your job, but also give training and leadership, to people who maybe quite didn't have respect for you yet at that point. And it sounds like you did a good enough job where you not only earned respect, but you're getting recognition for all those things.
Yeah, and it's I remember one of my older paralegals. We're now really good friends. We were not on the best of starts, I guess. We did not really see eye to eye, like, whatsoever. And there was this time where we honestly just hated each other, but we had to work with each other anyway. And it was one of the paralegals that I had to that I was assigned to basically look after that first time. But second time around, he was still there, and when I left, I didn't train him that time. He went to a different section, but these were straight new paralegals this time. But he sent me a message after, basically thanking me, and giving me props for actually basically learning from my mistake last time, and telling me that it actually really showed in their experience, not just my experience, but their experience on the job. And I was able to answer a lot of questions that I guess were asked of him.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool to see that. It just goes to show that even if you have like feuds with coworkers, like, it's only temporary, and if you get to the head of it, like, it's something that you can just look in the past and just both become a better person up from.
Oh yeah, dude. No, that's awesome. Like, and I think that's really a cool thing, even just with any relationship, because I think it's so mainstream in the culture that when things get tough in any relationship, you just burn the bridge and move on, even in romantic relationships,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But it's cool, I think, for anybody, coworker relationships, things like that, when you're able to just work through hard times. And then, you might hate each other for a little bit or for a while, but when things get resolved and you've worked through stuff, the honestly, like, love and respect you have for that person goes through the roof too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it almost feels like you respect them a lot more, because you also know, like, what they've been through, even though, like, you were kind of at odds for a certain amount of time. You don't really realize that until you're past that, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure, dude. Well, dude, I know the one thing I was really curious about, just because I remember you had some nutty stories, and I don't even know how much you're allowed to talk about this, but
Mm-hmm.
and correct me if I'm wrong, your role as a paralegal was to basically help prep the lawyers within the military for cases, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can think of it as like an administrative assistant or an executive assistant. It's the same concept. We're there to assist them with basically anything they need. We can basically do anything a lawyer does except practice law.
Right, right. That's freaking cool. So along those lines, I know one thing that I remember you telling me quite a bit, or would come up as we would talk, was you would work on court martial cases quite often,
Yes. Yes.
right? And it sounded like those got to be pretty dang heavy sometimes.
Yeah, and I want to dive too deep into it, but it's so my first couple months, I was kind of thrown into the deep end with one of the cases. Basically, what happened was my NCO or sergeant at the time basically kind of said, "You're going to be the litigation paralegal." And I'm like, all right, cool, sounds fun. You know, I'm open to experience. So I did just that in my first case. Sure enough, was a case that we were working on for uh, basically my entire time there. But it was the most intense case that it basically, to summarize, I won't dive in the nitty gritty kind of things. It is public knowledge now because the person has been sentenced to 25 years at that. But
Oh my God.
yeah, it was a shock to the system. But basically, the summarization is it was a grooming case, and if it was a sexual grooming case. So that's something
Jeez.
that like you don't really see all the time and realize that it actually does happen. So it was a shock to my system, and it was one of the first cases that I worked on, and I had to talk to the victims, you know, for like 4 hours each at a time and go into every little detail because we need to know that information. We just need to. If we go past it can bring up a lot of issues. And for this kind of intensity of a case, we do not want all those issues to arise. So we
Right.
did we did the hard and heavy lifting at the beginning, but it was something that was like, whoa.
Well, I would imagine, and I'm sure the victims that you were talking to, like that had to have been such an emotionally charged conversation where they're having to relive some of these awful things that happened to them too.
Yeah, those that's one thing that is insanely important in those cases is you do not want to really bring up those those topics too often with the victims because like you said it is honestly, if you bring it up too much, it's going to be like PTSD basically.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not too experienced in like how that all works, but I do know the first basically how it goes down is like the first interview is like introductions, telling them what we do and like who we are, the case, and why we want to be on the case. And this normally the second interview is when we talk about the details of what happened.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it was
That's the heavy one, huh?
that's the heavy one. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really ever
You
really
don't
want
kind
to
of get
do it.
into that, no, and
Yeah.
I don't want you to either, but
I mean,
I
there's a reason why I don't want to be in or like continue being in like criminal justice. It is something that I didn't really realize at the time, but you can get like secondhand PTSD from it, which I think I've like
oh
grown
yeah.
from and like outgrown from for the most part. Um, because as you get more experience as a paralegal, you take it with a grain of salt and realize that as shitty as this might say or seem, um, you have to look at it as evidence because that is your job. You can't. When I first started, I wanted to be in their shoes, you know, be there with them. That just wasn't my job. You know, if I was a special victims paralegal, that would be my job. But I would also be in the perspective of evidence and like how can we move this case forward, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, you that's the perspective that you have to look at it through in order to kind of live with those details because it is gruesome facts. It happened, you know, that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
it can get intense, and if you don't know how to adjust fire and realize that it is affecting your life, kind of thing, then you need to go talk to someone because you are not going to last long in that profession.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So if I'm hearing you right, like at first it's like you have a lot of empathy or sympathy for these victims, and it's easy to just want to be in their shoes and relive and help these people, but it sounds like you had to learn a way to compartmentalize so that you can just treat this as your job and you're just doing what you need to be able to help this person. You're not there to necessarily feel for them, kind of a thing. Like you're just trying to gather the facts so that the person whose job it is to fill for them and get them justice can do it effectively.
Yeah, exactly. And I was on the prosecution side, so I was looking at it as how can we prove the charges that we want to put on a charge sheet, and you need to look at it at that perspective, or else you're just going to write down notes just to write down notes. Because being a paralegal in an interview, you are basically there as just keeping notes, and you're the main person keeping notes of like what is talked about, the importance of those notes, and all that. Reason being is, if you think about it, if the attorneys are the only ones that are in there asking the questions, they can't really call themselves to the stand if they're the one taking the case.
Oh,
So
yeah. Interesting.
that's why basically any attorney you talk to, they always want their paralegal in an interview. That is the reason.
If I'm hearing right, because that's because you would potentially be able to be called up there and asked, or what?
Yeah, which I have for a completely different instance.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story. I was on the stand for like 2.5 hours, but that that was so stupid. It was basically about a note that I shredded. But here's the thing: I typewrite it, or not typewrite it. I made a memorandum about it, explaining the details, making it more uniform, really. So I shredded the note, thinking just like, I don't really need it. But this defense attorney, we'll just call him that. This defense attorney, we sent him a few handwritten notes, and normally you don't do that because it is attorney work product, but he took advantage of that to the maximum potential.
Yeah.
And basically asked, where's all the other notes? And it went in this whole thing, and I had to explain why I shredded them, and like that's why I was on the stand for 2 hours for that stupid little thing. That there's just this misconception on like one of the notes that was a little bit confusing. Don't get me wrong. It was fast typing, and it wasn't as clarified as it would be at this point with my experience. It was one of the newer notes that I did, or like newer paralegal notes. And
so this guy's thinking that you had like destroyed evidence or something.
Yeah, and what made me mad was he was basically doing a motion to dismiss for prosecutorial misconduct against my attorney, which, if you don't know, can get the attorney unbarred or disbarred. So I was basically fighting for my attorney's license up there. Yeah, that
sounds like an episode of Suits, bro.
That is something you never want to do.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's freaking heavy.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's crazy, bro. So you have all these amazing experiences in the Army. You're dealing with some pretty heavy, important situations, which I'm sure are incredible to add to your resume. So you're getting all this cool experience, and I know you went into the Army with the intention of using it as a stepping stone for what you're moving into now, bro. Like having such a cool experience, and like it sounds like you're getting accolades and recognition from your peers. Why quit, bro? It sounds like you had some good momentum and opportunity if you were to have stayed.
I kind of asked myself that, but like I said, I knew what I was going in for. I knew what I wanted to get out of it, and I think I did that. Simply put, I'm at the point where I kind of want to go on my own and really focus on myself, double down on everything I want to do, which I think I am doing. And there's a part of the military that you can't really focus on yourself in certain points. Like, for example, I like to work out by myself kind of as like a meditation practice or therapy session kind of thing. Put on the headphones and just go, you can
Absolutely.
relate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you can't really do that when you're in the army if you want. I mean, you can if you work overtime basically and go work out twice a day kind of thing, because in the morning it's basically guaranteed that you have to go work out,
Yeah.
with your group of people. For us, it was like everyone in the OSHA office of the staff judge advocate, which is basically the where all the attorneys and paralegals worked. Um,
Right.
Yeah, so that was like one of the main reasons is I wasn't really able to do a lot of things that I wanted to do on my own. And yeah, that's one of the most important things is I also at this point I feel like it's game time because I want to focus on like the entrepreneurial aspects of my life and really focus on my growth and my potential and see how far I can get um myself just based off my experience and just kind of this is what I did going into the army. I threw myself into the deep end, and that's honestly what I'm doing now. It's scary, but it is what it is. Like you don't,
Right.
and change is scary, like, and that's something I really learned in basic. And it sounds cliche, but being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that's something to always work on, and that's something that I kind of embrace. I there's a lot of things that I need to get better at, that's one of those things, but it's so hard that not a lot of people realize that they're actually afraid of change. And I am on this more the side that I try my best to embrace it. And it's not the fact that I'm changing like completely, but it's the fact that I'm changing in the direction that I want to go and to being a better person, a reflection of who I want to be mentally and physically and emotionally. And I can't really do that if I continue being in the military, in my opinion. I know a lot of people can, but this is something that I need to do on my own in my own path.
Bro, that's a lot, and I feel like I have a lot of follow-ups here. But like first off, so just to recap, like I think that it sounds like the reason you got out is you were so goal oriented going into the military. You knew what you wanted to get from it. You got it. Once you had it, even though it may have been appealing to stay in and there was some security there, you have all these other goals entrepreneurially, and the military didn't allow you to have that flexibility to work on those things. It sounds like you didn't want to just be a cog in the machine, and hopefully I'm not just putting words in your mouth, but you didn't want to just be the cog in the machine on the operation side of a business. It's like you have other areas that you wanted to develop and grow entrepreneurially or even just personally that the military couldn't afford you to do.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's kind of like my mantra. I don't remember what book that I read it in, but there's this entrepreneurial phrase called that goes as act, learn, build, repeat. And I like it so much that it's tattooed on my arm. It's something that I live by. It's something that has made me a better person, just because I think about it subconsciously, and it's just something that I've always stuck with. And for those of the people that are real close to me, they already know that. That's something that I really like. Um, that's something that I strive for, and I feel like that I'm on the path. I'm already on the path of kind of my own like destiny, if you will, as weird as that sounds. But
Yeah.
um, it feels honestly liberating to say that, because I actually, the future is not clear, but I am on a good path that I don't necessarily know where I'm going, but I know where I want to end up.
Yeah. Well, Chant, dude, those of you who are listening to this, like, I hope you can tell just how freaking fired up Chan is right now. Because, dude, I can just feel the passion coming out of your mouth right now, dude. Like, and it's
Thank you.
contagious. And I think that's honestly why, dude, I'm so pumped to just be working on kind of this side project with you of, just sharing our thoughts and what you're learning and what we're learning, and building on this brand of getting curious with Mitch, and now with Mitch and Chan, because, dude, I think that's one thing I love about you, man, and I feel like resonates with me is, you're just hungry, and you're open to ideas and learning, how can I build something that is successful, and whether that be in your personal life or professionally or even with relationships. And that's exactly how I am, and I feel like that's why you and I can talk for forever. It just makes sense, just hearing your background again, just in a short, within an hour of, who you are. Like, that's freaking awesome, dude. And that's the type of energy I think that's going to take you places. Not that I've, gone anywhere far either. I'm 26 and haven't done, you know, a crazy amount with my life yet. I don't have a 40-year career under my belt and can give all this advice. And maybe this is, something we clip and move to the beginning of this podcast, but I think the value that we have to offer to people, it's not, I mean, we do have some cool experience, and obviously you do too, being in the military and, speaking with generals and really cool stuff. But we are just two guys that are trying to make it. We're hungry. We want to learn. We want to grow. And I think there's a lot of other people out there too that, are kind of stuck in that 9 to 5 grind, or don't really see, how do I grow, or is there more to this life, or whatever it is. I just feel like we're both just curious dudes looking to learn things. And hopefully on this pod, we can just research topics, share what we're learning. And it's not always going to be, I think, just personal development stuff. I think it's just fun, cool stuff that we're learning too. But I think that's why I'm pumped to be doing this with you, man.
Yeah, and I feel the same exact way with you. And I'm not sure if you want to dive into it more. Maybe on the next half of the podcast, or whatever you want to call it. Dive
Yeah.
more into your background, and why you wanted to podcast, even like before this whole thing with me, or getting curious with Mitch, of like what made you get that itch of wanting to express either your mindset or other people's mindsets. But it is I honestly feel the same exact way. Like, we are at the point in our lives where we are in that growth phase, which I know a lot of people can really relate to this. If you have a growth mindset, we are just here to talk about our experiences, our failures included, because we are not perfect people. Simply put, we're just normal people. That's all it is. We're just talking and voicing our opinions on the internet and our experiences, and that's really it. There's nothing much to it. If people enjoy it, then then I hope you stay around, and in the future, maybe check out a live stream and check out more podcasts. All right, guys. So, kind of moving on to me being the non-focal point of the podcast, but y'all know Mitch. Getting curious with Mitch. So it's time to learn about the focal point of Mitch. That's really what it boils down to. So you already touched on it. We're cousins. We've known each other all our lives, but I want to start out with kind of like, how were you as a kid growing up?
Good question, man. I think growing up, like, I mean, I grew up, I was the oldest of 4 siblings. I have 3 little sisters. So growing up, like it was honestly, I think a pretty mellow childhood. Like I didn't have a little brother that I was butting heads with. I think I kind of developed like a peacemaker personality just because um, I don't know, like it was my sisters who were fighting, right? And I was just trying to calm them down. So I always had my own room. I think I was a pretty easy kid to raise for my parents. But I was always friends with kids who were older than me. I was the fifth grader hanging out with kids who were in seventh and eighth grade, and they're telling me what junior high is like, and you know, kissing girls and things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was always kind of learning from people who had more experience than me. So yeah, like growing up was great, man. I grew up in a very religious household, and I'm really religious myself. But my family, we're multi-generation members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so grew up going to church every Sunday, and it's like a pretty um, that you could say pretty rigid lifestyle, so to speak. Like there's a lot of commandments and things that we believe in that we believe there's blessings associated to living with it. But it wasn't until I was in seventh or eighth grade that really I kind of gained my own testimony for myself that I was like, man, like what, this lifestyle works for me, and I'm it helps me out. I have nothing against people who have different lifestyles, but I was just like, what, like this type of lifestyles brought me a lot of peace, and I want to share it with other people. And so I was into sports and everything in high school. I was a big runner. I think from a young age, being 12, 13, 14, definitely like religion was a big part of my life. I truly believed that Jesus Christ was a real person in up in heaven, and could have real influence in my life. And so that was really kind of a foundation of something that was incorporated into everything that I did at the time. Whether it was having fun with my friends or spending time with my family, schoolwork. I was really passionately into running when I was in high school. And, even then, dude, just like keeping it in my prayers, that I would perform my best at a track meet, things like that. Yeah, religion was a pretty big foundation. And I think, that being said, I think I sought out friends who shared, similar beliefs and would support me too, even if, and so, yeah, I was really blessed with some great friends in high school that supported me in my goals, and, helped me become the best runner I could be. I ran a mile in 4:42.
I still can't believe that.
Yeah, so like I definitely was. I think I've always had a passion for something, and I think a big part of that, and I truly believe that all of that was enhanced from my religious background. Like I said, I don't believe that there's any one right way to live your life. But I do believe that everyone, has to have some form of way to find peace um, and closure to things in your life. And for me, being a member of Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints is something that's truly had a lot of impact on my life and has brought me a lot of peace. So that's a really long way to answer your question, Chan, of, what was it like for me growing up? But I think that's kind of a snapshot of, what it looked like, from, yeah, during my growing up years.
Definitely, religion was definitely a strong point in your life. I remember being in your life, involved in your life, going to your house for a few weeks during the summer. And, that was definitely,
Yeah.
that was definitely one of the focal points, that I didn't really get as, cause when I was, for those of you who do not know, I was, I'm a former LDS as well, or not as well, but, I no longer practice. So around like 12, 13, I didn't really stay in the religion, but I was able to kind of keep the ties close. Also with like Mitch, continue being friends with him, and just being good buddies. And I was able to kind of keep that camaraderie with him, and um, um, that was definitely something that was really important to him. I remember you also going back to the running. That was something that was really important in your life. I remember you just be grinding every day super early, going out for 5 mile runs, or I'm not exactly sure how long, but it was basically every day you'd be out doing something for running. I definitely
Yeah,
remember that
no.
specifically.
And it was, man. And I think people who have met me in the last 5 years, and I tell them I run in high school, it's hard to, they don't know, what I was like in high school, like, and I think one of the big things my coach at the time told me, he was just like, and he told everyone on our team, he's like, don't be the average teenager. Don't be don't sleep away your whole summer. Don't stay up till 4 a.m. and wake up at 1 every day. He was very much like, be exceptional and don't just be a good athlete. Like, be a good kid at home. Like, get your homework done. Like, be nice to your parents. Like, I just had a really good coach who was, and I think we gained a lot of respect for him too because he was a phenomenal runner himself. He ran, a 14-minute 5K in college, and you know anyway, so I had some really good role models. But yeah, man, the running thing was a grind. For example, my senior year, I ran 700 miles over a 12-week period.
Hmm.
Uh, and that was, average. And I ran 6 days a week, so that's averaging 10 miles a day for 12 weeks. And so yeah, it was my life, and I think, very similar to your life experience, Chan, that's where I think I learned my work ethic and my discipline. I didn't really have summer jobs during that period of my life in high school, but that was my job. It was working at running and striving to be the best runner I could be. And yeah, man, it definitely was a big part of my life.
Yeah, and kind of to touch on the work ethic a little bit before we move on. I think a lot of people who haven't like gone on the athletic side of things don't realize actually how intense it is, and don't realize how much of a job it actually can be to improve yourself. Do you
Yeah.
kind of want to like touch on the topic of like what you had to go through mentally to become a better runner?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that kind of tied into, and this was just my personality. Like I said, growing up, I was always friends with people who were older than me. So I just kind of had a natural tendency when I was running to be like, I became close friends with the top guys on the team, and I was just like, what are these guys doing that I'm not doing? And what can I do so that I'm running as fast as they are, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of that came down to it was just a lot of discipline. It was in the summer going to bed at 10 and waking up at 6 and being dialed with my nutrition. It wasn't anything, I think, super. There wasn't ever any secret sauce. It was just a lot of work. My coach would always say, like, there's no secret to getting faster. It's like the more you run, the faster you're going to get. The people that there is some talent and genetics involved, but it was just like, work trumps talent, majority of the time. So I was just like, look, I'm going to do whatever I can to train as hard as I can without getting injured. Is kind of the mindset. So yeah, I was pretty dialed for all of high school. Every all and I did have a lot of fun with my friends, but it was like we were all just obsessed with becoming the best runner. Like, sure, we had our focus on grades and family, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like at that time in our lives, we just wanted to be fastest runners we could be. And it was just like, hey, what does it take? What do we got to do? Is it ab workouts every day? Are we lifting in the gym? How much protein are we eating every day? How much sleep are we getting? It's just like what can we optimize further so that when we step on that starting line, we're the most prepared we can be. And I think, that carried all the way through my running career. I remember it was my goal. My whole thing with running was I didn't want to have any regrets by the time I graduated. I started running from summer after my 8th grade year until my senior year in 12th grade. And my goal was I wanted to be able to graduate and finish my last race, collapsed on my knees, and be able to say that I gave this sport everything I could. There wasn't a stone unturned. I gave this thing my all. And and I can honestly say that I did that. But that was my goal, dude. I was just like, what can I do to be the best that I can be? And I feel like I did that. Obviously looking back, hindsight, there's things I wish I had known when I was a senior or as a freshman that I only came to find out as a senior. But it was like that whole time I was just doing everything I could to be the best I could be, and I think I did the best I could those years. And I think learned and got better and learned to work harder and could do more, and I think just progressively got to be the best so that when I did finish that last race, um, I really did have no regrets. My teammate, man, my teammate Josh Ward, shout out Josh Ward. He was the fastest on our team. His mile was like a 4:12 in high school. His 2 mile was like a 9:06. He was just incredible, right? But he just had these like one-liner quotes that he would say, and I obviously respected him a lot, not only because he was a good friend, but he was just really fast, right? So it's like you're always gonna heed the advice of someone who's doing what you want to do. But he was just like, man, like, you know what, Mitch, like, you're not always going to be able to run your fastest, but you can always run your hardest. You know, I was just like, man, like, and that's applicable to everything, right? You're never going to feel 100% and have the energy you want when you show up to work every day, right? But you can always work your hardest that day. So it's like, man, like that was huge. And another one that he would tell me too was like, it's not always easy, but it's going to be worth it. Like his whole thing, like when he was in you're 9 out of 10 miles into a run and you're giving it your all and you're in the most pain during that whole run, it's only going to hurt more over the last mile. He would say like the one-liner thing that would go through his head every time was just, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. And he would just say that over and over, like as things got hard and as things got tough, he would just say that in his head. And it was just like, man, I almost get emotional thinking about it because it's just like, it is worth it, like obviously there's things you go through in life and there's unexpected tough things that happen, but I think that's become my mantra when things get tough for me too, is just like yeah, when you know where you want to go and what it takes to get there, and when parts of that process get tough, like that's what it comes down to, man, is it's worth it. And that's what's going to get you through, like keep you grounded with it. So um sorry, I know that's a lot there, man, but yeah, I think
No,
as
that's
far as just
awesome.
speaking to the mentality that I think I had at the time, like those were a lot of the things that I thought about. We were just obsessed as runners and as teammates, and we had a lot of fun times. Like I loved high school. But yeah, at the end of the day, we were just obsessed with being the fastest runners we could be, and just looked at every aspect of our lives that in training that we could optimize so that we could get there.
The quote from your buddy, it's worth it, reminds me of something that I kind of learned from basic. Is you always hear the saying of take it one step at a time,
Yeah.
but in my mind I feel like that's a little bit too broad. um I feel like you need to take it, and whether or not you need to take it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, or even 1 second at a time. Um, the whole reason why you need to focus on those kinds of things is to keep moving forward to something that you actually want to do. And that all
Yeah.
goes back into the growth mentality that you and I are so keen to. It allows us to push through those hard moments, and like you did, improving your runtime, and bettering your view in your religion, and just becoming a better person overall. um I it's obvious that that quote, "It's worth it," is really important to you, and kind of is like one of your lifelines in
Yeah.
growth and just becoming a better person. But on that note, I kind of wanted to dive a little bit more on the religion sides of things for you.
Yeah.
I do know you were a missionary. What kind of made you want to propel your religious aspects of your life into becoming a missionary in the LDS church?
Yeah, it's a good question, man, and I think there's a lot of ways you could answer that. But at the end of the day, dude, like people love sharing and talking about what's helping them, right? Like if you went to, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, let's say you went to this hole in the wall pizza place, right? And you tried it, and it was the best pizza you ever had. It filled you up. You were a happy guy, happy tummy, and you're like, bro, this is the best pizza I have ever freaking had, right? If you have that experience, you're probably going to tell people about it. You're going to go home to your roommates or your family and be like, bro, you got to try this pizza. This was the best thing. It was expensive, but bro, it was worth every freaking penny.
That's
You know
so
what I mean?
true.
You know what I mean? It's like people love sharing and talking about. It's the same thing with movies, right? Like
Yeah.
when Oppenheimer came out, if you like that movie, you're like, bro, saw Oppenheimer. It was the coolest thing. I saw it in IMAX and it was so worth it. Like the effects were so great. Like best night of my life. Like it was 3 hours, but it went by in 2 seconds because I loved it. You know what I mean? Like people love talking about what they're getting value from. And so for me, bringing that back to religion, like, dude, I I wanted to serve a mission and go out and share my beliefs because I got value in it, you know. But like I was saying earlier, like I my religion was kind of a foundation for every part of my life, and so when I had an opportunity to go to a foreign country and share that with other people, I didn't honestly even care where I went. I ended up serving in Ghana in West Africa, which was super cool. But I didn't go there because I wanted to go see a cool place. I was just like, look, this gospel has changed my life. It has brought me so much peace and guidance and help in my own life. And I don't. People can live their life however they want, but this is something that's helped me, and I want to share that with other people. And so I was just pumped and excited to do it. And if you're not familiar with a mission, it's a pretty rigid schedule, and you put a lot of things on hold in your life. Pretty like literally everything. You're not even engaging with. You're not watching movies. You're not hopping on social media for fun. You're not dating anybody. Imagine an 18-year-old dude who's not allowed to talk to girls romantically. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
if you got caught doing that, you'd get sent home, if you kissed a girl. You know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
all these things like dating, your education, everything. You're dropping all of that for this super immersive full-time, more than full-time job that you're doing every day. You're waking up at 6:30, you work out for 30 minutes and you do your own study for an hour, and then you have a companion who you can't leave, by the way, is glued to you by the hip. Or the only time you're not with your companion is when you're in the bathroom or showering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty rigid schedule, but I was so down to do it because, doing all those things was just going to make me more effective in helping more people experience the happiness and peace that I had. And so that was something I was interested in and doing from a young age. I think a lot of guys who end up serving missions, make that decision when they're, probably within 6 months of the age range when you can go, which is when you turn 18. But my dad ended up serving a mission, and I heard all of his cool experiences when he was a young man, and from the time I was like 14, I was like, dude, there is nothing that is going to stop me from doing this, because I like this gospel means so much to me, and I just want to share that with other people. I'm not a perfect person. I don't claim to be or ever will be. But I was just like, you know what, this is something that's helped me in my life, and I'm pumped to share this with as many people as I can for 2 years.
So do you think
Oh yeah.
do you think going on a mission was something that you always, like, obviously going back to 14, do you think it was just something that you always knew you're going to do, kind of like something as your calling, like it was just something that it was going to be something a part of your life?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, man, I think from an early age, like I didn't always grow up, believing or finding value in the principles that the church taught, especially, before I was 13, because there's some rigid things, like not drinking coffee or tea or, you know, just different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't really care about those things, but it was like once I started getting value from like living those teachings, and I was just like, man, you know what? I actually feel a lot of peace in my life. Yeah, when I was 14, I was just like, yeah, why would I not go? Like, this is going to be the coolest thing ever. And even before I went, like because there's missionaries all over the world in almost every city, and the missionaries that were assigned to our local neighborhood area, like when I was 16, like I would go out and work with them for, like evenings after school when I got back from running practice and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
no, I was just hungry for it, man. And so, yeah.
What I guess kind of diving more deep into the mission, because you were gone for 2 years, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So there's obviously a lot of experience, and I knew I had a lot of experience in my few years in the military, and we kind of, I think we can both kind of relate to that rigid lifestyle, obviously in different aspects. But what, um kind of on the note of just being in that situation, were there any times that you kind of wanted to get away from it?
Dude, yeah, I mean, yeah, it was one of the hardest experiences of my life. So, and just for context too, I mentioned earlier I served in Ghana and West Africa, and one aspect of the mission experience, like I was saying, is having a companion 24/7. And this is another dude who, you don't sleep in the same bed, but you're in the same room, and
Right.
you're glued to the hip, right? You're with each other 24/7. That's the most I've ever been with one single person at a time. More than even my wife.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and my wife and I spend a ton of time together. So you can imagine, dude, with two young adults who don't have a ton of experience with like, communication or like working through things. You know, I I had a lot of, companions that came from different cultures and backgrounds. I had a lot of companions that were from Africa, Uganda and things like that. And so you can imagine, two guys who grew up in completely different cultures and come up on different cues, um, communication wise, there's a lot of misunderstandings, right? Just on like little things, it's not like I never had any like major fights where I like, oh, I hate you, but it's like there's just some miscommunications, even just being around the house where it's like, yeah, it's hard. Like you get so irritated with another person and there's a lot of conflict. Um, one, just because you're glued to the hip and you're spending so much time together. But also there's just, yeah, the hardest part of the mission for me was managing those companion relationships. You know, it's pretty easy being on your own. Like you don't really have a lot of confrontation, but when you're, you know, when you're with someone that long and for that often, like it gets tough sometimes, man. And there were
Yeah.
some relationships where it's like companionships where it's like, dude, like I just went in the bathroom and cried because that was the only place I could get some privacy. You know, it's not even like, oh, you get in a fight and then you go for a walk and blow off some steam. It's like you can't even do that. You know, so it's like, yeah, dude, I just went in the bathroom and just freaking bawled for a while. You know, turn on the shower. So yeah, dude, it was kind of baptism by fire, like you were saying earlier, of just learning how to manage not even obviously not a romantic relationship, but just like a friendship with someone, you know. And that, yeah, definitely sometimes there. You know, I never really took it personally, like if work was really going well or not. Um, you know, because my whole thing was like, look, I'm out there and I'm doing my best, and you know, if I baptize one person or 10 people or zero people, whatever this month, like it doesn't really matter because I'm doing everything I can. You know, the hard work wasn't necessarily like the hard part for me, but definitely, yeah, man, managing some companion relationships were tough sometimes.
For sure. Yeah. And I can honestly relate to that. We talked about it already, but you know, just being with the same people over and over, can get repetitive, and you know, there's almost like no going away from it. Like,
Right.
as I talked about, you know, I had some coworkers that I tended to not like sometimes, and there was just no way. It's not like any other job where you can just quit it. You have to keep going and learn from that, or just hate your life. And
Oh yeah.
I think we know the obvious answer to that, but kind of along the topics of um being in the mission, what's like one thing that kind of sticks out to you, like one experience or even a few, that you might be able to talk about that are just like, did I actually like live through that?
Man, I'm trying to think, man. That's a loaded question. I'm trying to think. Um, I'll say this, like I honestly just being there kind of felt like a dream. And there's this weird thing because Ghana is like a third world country, right? And when you're there, you're obviously interacting with hundreds of people um, over the course of the week. Like you're talking with people all day, and it's this totally different environment from a first world country here in Utah, right? It's like super hot, super dusty. Everywhere is just dirt. Um, and you know, being a white guy that's dressed nicely, it's like you're that was the first time in my life I've ever been a minority. You know, it's like I'm the only white guy unless my companions from America for hundreds of miles. You know what I mean? It's just like it was totally different experience. So being there just totally felt like you're just in a dream, like a haze, almost kind of a thing. The thing that was interesting, man, is like when you're there, you kind of have it compartmentalized because in my head it's like I know I'm going home in 2 years. You know, it's like I'm here right now, like, and it doesn't feel real. Like I know what I'm going back home to. Like I have a nice like home at my parents' house. Like I have a future at college, like things like that. The thing that was like hard to comprehend, man, is like that was the reality for some people, for those people living there. You know, like those people are going to live in that little village that they're at for the rest of their life. No, I met some, like there was one dad that I met. In order to get his kids just going to primary school or elementary school there, he was literally driving a taxi 20 hours a day. You know, like
Holy crap.
slept for 4 hours every night and then drove a taxi 20 hours a day just so he could provide food for his family and pay his kids school fees. So it was almost like he was sacrificing his life so that his kids and hopefully have a better life than he did. No, and that's going to be his reality. And it's not like they have a retirement or a pension or things like that there. It's like they just work, and a lot of times it's like hardly anything, you know? So that was like one of the most mind blowing things to me there, where it's just like like you and I talk about going through a growth phase in our lives right now, and we have a lot of opportunity and potential opportunity, like entrepreneurially, or even if you were to just go a career route, you know what I mean? But you can imagine, bro, that you don't have any opportunity, like imagine you're just having to Uber for the next 65 years. You're doing it 20 hours a day. You have zero free time. Like,
That'd be
you just,
torture.
you know what I mean? But that's your reality,
Yeah.
you know? So, yeah, man, I don't know if I can pinpoint like one like crazy experience, but though that was like one crazy realization of like, yeah, I'm here and I'm going to help, share this message that has impacted my life because I know it can help anybody. Man, like, I'm so blessed with the opportunity that I have when I go home. Dude, these people are just gonna like this is their reality. Like living in a village, like working on a farm, 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day for $10. It's like it was hard to comprehend, man. It was a, a reality check to say the least.
Did that experience change your, or that realization change your perspective on like what goes around in the world?
Yeah, dude. Like, I mean, there's a lot you could say there, but I think the one thing that it did for me, dude, it's like, hey, man, like these people are in their village and have zero opportunity, and I hope the best for them, but like I know what I'm going home to, and I've been blessed with an opportunity to live in this amazing country and um, get an education and have the time and affordability to try new things and to grow. And so I was just like, kind of came home with like a fire under me of like, dude, I'm gonna freaking make it happen when I get home. You know, like I'm gonna get an education because I have the opportunity to, and I think that's where it kind of adds to this whole premise of this podcast, right? Like getting curious. I was just like, dude, I'm gonna look at all the opportunities I can out there to be successful and see what I can capitalize on. So
That's awesome. And
yeah,
when you came back, um, going back to normal life, was there a part of you that kind of stuck with Ghana that you can't really like get back? And so, in a way, and more explanation of, do you miss it?
dude. I'll say this, bro. I came home. I was honestly kind of a weirdo.
Really?
Because when you get home, it's like, think about it, dude. It's like you're living this incredibly rigid lifestyle where it's like you don't even have really hobbies. It's like your free time is like studying the Bible and the Book of Mormon so that you can learn how to be a better teacher. It's like you're spending zero time playing video games. You're not going out and doing things recreationally. The crazy part of it, dude, is like that sounds like it would be torture, but bro, I freaking loved it. Like that was like what I loved doing. Like, like,
It was
I'm
something
listening
you
to
were
like,
passionate for.
yeah, man, because I just wanted to be the best missionary that I could be. And I got so much joy. Like, I haven't really talked about it yet, but like I literally saw like, like how I was getting value from living the gospel. Like I saw like people learn the things that I was teaching them, those gospel principles, and applying it to their own lives and seeing their lives change and gain more happiness because of it. And crazy experiences teaching and miracles, seeing people applying it in their lives. And there was like times in my life, like on my mission, where it was like peak happiness. It was like I felt so successful. Like there were times like I literally was like almost felt like I was gonna pass out because of how happy I was.
That's awesome.
Like imagine it's like you're going like if you could go out every day, 'cause it's not like you're worried about paying rent or you know paying a phone bill. Like you're literally your only responsibility is to share the gospel and it's something that's blessed your life. And so when you're just waking up every day and you're doing everything you can to share it with other people, and then you're seeing it change people's lives, and not only are you serving the people live there, you're also, you have opportunities in leadership to help other missionaries develop and grow and get better at what they're doing. And then you're seeing the impact you have as a leader as you're helping these other missionaries become better at what they're doing. And you see the joy that they have and the love that you have for you and the love that you have for them. And, you know, it's like one of the happiest times in my whole life. And so you can imagine, dude, when I got home, and obviously I'm pumped to see my family, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen them in 2 years. And back then when I was on my mission, they've changed it since, but like I would write home emails every week, but the only time I talked with my parents or family on the phone was twice a year. It was on Mother's Day and on
Holy
Christmas.
crap. I
It's
can't
it's
imagine.
not like I couldn't even just call home on like a hard day and vent to my dad or call my buddies. Like so yeah, like obviously I was pumped to like see my family and like eat the food that I missed. Like they didn't have cereal there, or like watch all the movies that had come out over the last 2 years that I missed out on. All those fun things were cool, man. But and so like you can imagine the anticipation, like walking behind that door and you see your family there waiting for you and the reunion that you have there. Um, but dude, after like the super fun times of like, you get reunited with your family at the airport. I remember just walking out from the airport into like the car garage, where my family had parked their car. And I literally just started bawling. Like just sobbing, and my dad just like gave me a hug. And the only way I can describe it, dude, is it's like felt like I got dumped after like a 10-year relationship or something. It was like the worst breakup feeling of my life, because I went from this incredible happiness of and doing that more than full time for 2 years. You get really good at it by the end of it.
Yeah.
You're very good at working with members and building relationships and talking with new people, and the culture super well at that point. But it's like you go from this like incredibly immersive experience that you love the people that you're teaching and that you're meeting, and you love the relationship you have with your companion, and you're working so hard together, and you're planning and you're thinking and you're praying. Like you're not thinking about yourself at all. Like you're just doing everything you can to help these people, and they love you and you love them, and you're working with other missionaries, and you're trying to help the mission do better, and help other people find success, and you're getting joy from that. And then all of these incredible things, and then overnight in one plane ride, boom, like it's gone, like it's over. And it's like, man, all these people and things and that I loved is just gone. And I'm never, I get the question all the time, oh, would you ever want to go back? And yeah, it would be cool to go back. But I'll never have an experience like that again, ever in my life, you know? And yeah, dude, it was like the biggest breakup emotionally in my life, as far as just something ending so abruptly. And it was really hard, man. But it was a hard experience, but one that I loved, and I think kind of set the tone for the last 5 or 6 years of my life. And yeah, dude.
Was it like a besides the fact of it being obviously an amazing experience for you, going back, was it almost like you because like for me, for example, getting out of the military, I almost it was almost like a cultural shock going back. Did you feel
Yeah.
the same way?
Yeah, dude, it was just weird. And I kind of wish I had like been able to like move out and go to college or something like right when I got home. Because I lived at home for 2 years right after. And it was a culture shock, bro, where it's like all of a sudden it's like dating is a thing and I don't know how to freaking flirt with girls and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And that's what everyone's doing. And um, yeah, and I had like you can imagine, going that long and loving the lifestyle that I had as a missionary. Like I had zero interest for playing video games or watching movies or anything that was a time waster, so to speak. You know what I mean? So it was just like all of a sudden there's all of these things and things that you can put your time into and yeah, dude, it was hard, man. Like, and then the on top of that, like my mission president, the guy that was over like leadership wise in the mission I served, he was like, dude, when you get home, your next mission is to find a wife. And so, dude, I'm like, dude, I need to find a wife like as soon as possible. So I'm trying to go on dates, but then like I hadn't like developed like my own personality yet. I didn't know what I was going to be studying in school or working towards or so it was tough, man. It was a really tough couple years until I eventually moved up to Logan and went to college. But yeah,
So when you went to college, you ended up getting into a fraternity. Like,
uh,
why? Like, why'd you go? Why'd you change from being this you know very strict going to church and that being your entire daily life, just studying the religion, studying your practice, compared to going into your fraternity? Like, that's obviously a huge jump. What made you want to take that change after getting back and getting used to things?
well, drinking and partying just looked way more fun.
Oh yeah, yeah, taking
Just kidding.
shots every day.
No, no, no. Mom and dad, I promise. And for those of you who don't know, yeah, in the fraternity, yeah, I never had a sip of alcohol or anything. But dude, I think really the only way to answer that question, like, kind of have to back it up a year or two, um, back to COVID. And this is a time I think you had just started getting into the military and stuff. But, I was 23, 24 at the time, and um, I was living up in Logan away from my family. And I was really kind of starved socially. Um, Because being 23 or 24, most of my friends from like high school were either married or like done with school at that point, pretty much. And so none of those people I was friends with in 2018, 2019 were still up at college anymore, for the most part. But because it was COVID, and normally like college is like a pretty social scene. Like there's a lot of things going on. There's parties, there's game nights, there's get-togethers, there's things like that. But during COVID, like none of that was happening, right? Because socially, like at that time, like if you organized like a big party at your place, like you were kind of socially crucified. You know what I mean? Like you were the
uh,
bad guy being like a what was it, like the mega spreader or something of COVID. You know what I mean?
I didn't even know that
So
was a
that
term, to be honest.
I can't remember what it was, but basically it was like there was nothing going on socially. It was like I would just sit in my room and I was delivering pizzas at Domino's and I'd come home and play video games and then go to class and that was it. And so I got pretty depressed because I'm just a person that really needs social interaction. You know, in the Bible, it says it's not good for man to be alone. And bro, for me, that rings so true because I was so lonely and I gained a lot of weight and I was really unhappy with who I was. And you know, this kind of answers the question too. You know, why did I start that podcast or this podcast a couple years ago? Well, I kind of realized I was like, man, like there's nothing happening socially. I really don't have any friends up here. I need to find some kind of a productive hobby. And that's where I got into podcasting. And, you know, being a curious guy and, you know, I'm always looking for, you know, I'm a very open-minded person and I love talking to people who have had interesting life experience. And so I was like, dude, why don't I just start a podcast? And I networked a bit and I found out there's a studio up on campus that I could use that had good recording equipment and things there. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I just had like a list of like 20 people that I wanted to talk to that I thought were interesting. And my podcast was like my excuse for talking to them, you know. And so one of those things that I was interested in was Greek life, was fraternities. And my so I kind of networked and I got in touch with the president of Sigma Chi up at Utah State. And I was like, man, can I just get you on the podcast and like pick your brain? Because honestly, like my perception of a fraternity is probably no different than 99% of people at the time. I was like, all I know about you guys is you freaking party hard, you drink a lot, and you kind of have a bad reputation for like, you know, sexual assault. You know what I mean? Like that was my perception of a fraternity and just like hazing and like initiation rituals, like things like that. Like pretty much just like all negative things. And especially as someone like as a member of the church, like I have no interest in like drinking or smoking, you know, having sex, things like that. So I was just like, you know, obviously that's probably not going to be something for me. But, you know, there's this guy who's, you know, in the thick of it, you know, and I'm super curious as to why is this guy so bought in with a fraternity? Is there something more to it other than you know the drinking and partying? And so I had this guy on my podcast, and it's still up there. You know, it's just a recording of us talking with masks on. But I was just like, hey, this is what I know about you guys. Pretty mostly negative stuff, but tell me what a fraternity is all about. And he answered the question of, you know, really what does it do or what's the overall goal of a fraternity? And he was just like, you know what? It's to make better men that are more able to contribute to life. And not only that, it's going to be one of the best support circles you could ever have in a college community. And there's a really cool thing in Sigma Chi where, you know, there you basically have, he was telling me how there's basically like an open forum for all the brothers to basically vent and share anything that's on their mind, almost like a group like therapy session kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so he was just telling me about like you know how all of these guys come together and are initiated and share the same values and come together on. Um, and you hold each other accountable. And so I one of my questions was like, well, like how does a guy like me who has no interest in like drinking and partying, so to speak, like is there a place for me in a fraternity? And he was telling me how in Sigma Chi, there's this thing called the spirit of Sigma Chi, where they believe that um, an organization that has guys with different talents, temperaments, and convictions will make a stronger organization than if everyone was just cookie cutter, shared the same things. Right? Basically saying that diversity is going to make each other better. And he was saying, you know, at the same time, you know, that you know there are absolutely guys who drink and have a good time. You know, if you make it clear that you don't do those things and you have respect for them, you know, if you showed up to a party and you made it clear to everybody that these are your beliefs and they saw that you had a beer in your hand, you know, they'd grab the beer, throw it out the window, and be pissed at you. Like, Mitch, what the heck are you doing? So it's almost like they would reinforce my beliefs, because they respect who I am and I respect who they are.
That's awesome.
So me being, pretty converted to the beliefs that I have, I was like, okay, yeah, there's no way, and I was 24. So I was like, bro, there's no way an 18, 19-year-old kid, first of all, is ever going to peer pressure me into drinking a beer. It's like, screw you.
Right.
But on top of that, I knew it would be a place where I'm not going to get peer pressure. I was like, I'm going to be respected for who I am. I'm going to love these guys. And we're all going to be committed to this purpose of becoming better men that are going to be better future husbands one day and better businessmen. And I was like, dude, I'm all in. Like, if I can be in an organization that's going to help me do all of those things and have fun do it and live in a house where I'm living with 20 of my best friends, you know what I mean? It's one thing to have a bunch of rando roommates that you like maybe one or two of them and hate the rest of them. But when you live in a house where it's like 20 of your best friends, like, imagine living in an apartment building where it's just your best friends and you all share the same values and you're all going to help and support each other and you all know like the deepest darkest secrets about each other. Like, I was like, dude, sign me the freak up. Like, I want that, you know? And don't get me wrong, man, like, there's drinking, there's partying, there's like, it's a good time. And I can be a pretty fun non-drunk person or a pretty drunk sober person.
I've seen some
You know what I mean?
videos.
I broke a table or two in my time there, but
That's one I
but
remember.
but bringing it back, man, like, being as socially starved as I was, but still having those religious beliefs, and finding out that this would be a place that I'd be respected and could, you know, I guess share love and support for other people and get that back. Like, I was just like, dude, sign me up. And dude, that place changed my life. Like, I talking about, how happy I was as a missionary. That was another time in my life where I was so happy and so bought in. And yeah, dude, it was kind of the same thing. I obviously had met, my now wife at the time while I was in that fraternity. And when it came time to move out of that house, dude, it was like going through another breakup, just like when I got home from my mission. Like I bawled my freaking eyes out because it was just like something that I had become so passionate about and was so bought in with, and had in turn literally changed my life, going from so down and so depressed and so overweight to feeling so loved, and got myself to a place where I was so happy with what I was doing with my life and in a position where I was able to meet my future wife, and like I was just kind of so overcome and so full of gratitude that it was hard to leave, man. I was only in there for a year, but that was one of the happiest and honestly biggest transformational years of my life. And those guys there are literally my best friends. I love those dudes. I wish I could see them more.
That's awesome. What do you think was like harder? Is like leaving the fraternity, or not really leaving, but moving elsewhere from the
Yeah,
fraternity, or leaving the missionary or mission?
I don't know, man. I would honestly say probably the same. Like, I don't know. I honestly feel like you would feel the same way, leaving a mission or leaving a fraternity. It was the same way I felt when I finished my last race in high school. After working so hard for 4 years, I was obsessed with being the fastest runner that I could be at the time. And then all of a sudden I cross a finish line and boom, that's over. Like, yeah, I went out in the field afterwards with one of my best friends and teammates and we bawled our eyes out. It was like getting dumped. I think anytime you are 1,000% bought in with something, you give it your all, and then that experience ends, dude. Like, some people might be more emotional than other people, but dude, yeah, like it's a loss. Like a big part of your life is gone, you know? And it kind of, and when it's abrupt, like humans don't like change, you know? Like
Mhm.
you were saying, like being uncomfortable with the uncomfortable, like that's a hard thing to do. You know, we like stability, we don't like change, and especially when something was so good and made you so happy. And it may not even be a bad reason why you're moving on. You could be moving on to better things, but when you're losing out on a big part of your life that really had major impact, like that's a loss. That's hard. And
Absolutely.
so yeah, taking away a passion or something big in your life like that, like it's a tough thing, man.
So after the fraternity, like, how did you want to like go about life?
Well, fortunately, like I said, I met my wife, Lindsay, and fell in love really quick. And my goal was to kind of stay up there and hang out with the guys, but she was moving out of Logan, and um, yeah, I fell head over heels for her, and she moved down to Salt Lake City, and I was like, dude, I can't do this semi long distance thing. So I moved down, and we dated for a year and got married. But honestly, I was, I graduated college and got a degree in marketing, and I was just kind of fired up to get into my career and start growing that way. So um, yeah, dude, I think I was just kind of pumped to take on the next chapter and, adjust to married life and get after it with my career and start making more money. And um, yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at right now, man. And I'm, like the premise of this podcast, man, I'm always curious. I'm always open minded, and I'm just looking for, what's the next step for Mitch Perry to grow, you know?
Yeah. So I have two questions. One's about your future career and your current career in marketing. But the first one I want to talk about is your marriage, and I don't want to dive too deep, but I just want to see your perspective on this. And
Yeah.
do you think it's worth it?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, put it short, dude. No, I think, to be honest, man, I was even talking with Lindsay about this today. Like, I think, at the end of the day, I think for whatever reason, just innately in us, everyone is looking for a spouse, fall in love and whatever. For whatever reason, that's just in human nature. But I think at the end of the day, I think before I even met Lindsay, like I think I always had this picture of like, okay, when I'm 80 years old, I'm reflecting and looking back on my life, like what do I want to have accomplished? Like what do I want to what are my goals? What do I want to have done? What is my bucket list? And I think I want to be able to look in the mirror and be like, yeah, you know what? I found someone, I fell in love, and we raised a family, and my kids had kids, and we were supportive and did everything we could to raise them well and give them a good future and to find joy and satisfaction in that. And I obviously do have like these aspirations to, be a successful businessman and, make a lot of money and do those things. But at the end of the day, it's like, I think that's what I would be most proud of in my life is raising a family. And, I've been married for less than 6 months, man. So I can't say like, man, I have all this experience and no, it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've been insanely happy and I love being married. Um, but yeah, man, I think as far as like that's the goal I want in my life, and that's the way to do it. And so far so good, man. So
That's awesome.
that's really what I can say about that.
um, Another point that I was trying to get to about your career is Do you always see yourself as being in the side of marketing, or is that kind of something that you have like as you intend to be a stepping stone for something you want to do elsewhere in life in the future?
It's a good question, man. You know what? Like I'm never, you know, I guess married to my ideas or with what I'm doing with my life. But I think right now, yeah, like it's definitely like I'm in digital marketing right now. It's an industry that's not going away anytime soon or ever. You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of potential to grow there. And I love the company that I'm with. It's Scroll, and they've treated me super well, and I'm pumped with it. Uh, but I'm always open minded, and if I'm not always the guy that's like grass is greener, so I'm going to jump here. But at the end of the day, if I want to be able to be a successful future father and supportive husband, and I think in marketing, man, yeah, like I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I've been in it for 2.5 years running Google ads, and it's been awesome so far, man. It's definitely client work is tough, and I think I do have entrepreneurial, aspirations, and I'm always brainstorming and thinking of ideas. But yeah, for right now, man, I'm loving where I'm at.
That's awesome. Um, on that note, to kind of round off the conversation, where do you see yourself in 5 years and 10 years?
That's a good question, man. Um, if it's not with the current company I'm at, I probably see myself having started my own business. Whether that's a marketing or not, I'm not sure at this point, but I'd love to have gotten a business off the ground at that point. And I think 10 years from now, have a sweet young family that I'm being ultra supportive of, and working towards that. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Oh man, it was great talking to you, man. This like it's been 2 hours and 15 minutes. It feels like we just started, dude. It's
No, it's a Joe
it
Rogan link podcast, bro.
it's always a great time talking to you, man. This is just another reason why we intended to create this podcast. Is as you guys know now, we can talk for hours, and it's just
Literally.
something that we figured we'd share with the world, and something that I, I feel like we can both agree with this. Something that we feel that everyone can benefit from. Um, I believe, and I'm pretty sure you believe as well, that everyone needs to have a growth mindset. And I feel like if you have that mindset, that you can take something away from this podcast and really learn from something that we either talk about or learn about, or just intend to get an experience from.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. Well, heck yeah, dude. I'll like and subscribe, yo.
All right, guys.
Anyway, hey, well, thanks, guys. Good chatting.
All right. See you next time.
Yeah.